We are live. So happy Friday. Happy first Friday in August.
Hmm.
So I'm excited to be here with you guys, but I'm always excited to be here with you guys just because I love this time. I love this time talking to my staff. You know, it's a time for us to connect, and I always love you guys are all such brilliant therapists. So I always love hearing you guys' take on things. So that's always really interesting to me. So today Um, I think we're going to talk about this today, and we'll talk about it again in the future with everybody. But your take on that TV show on Netflix, Sex Education. So, if
Hmm.
anybody hasn't seen it out there, it's a TV show that's about a high school boy who, because his mom is a sex therapist, I think, that he winds up being like this unofficial therapist for all of his classmates and everything that ensues with being a teenager. So, but we're going to talk about that today. So, the sex education Netflix show, I think it's Netflix. So, all right. So, Mary Hannah, dive in. What do you love about the show? And then we'll talk
Yeah.
about what you hate about the show.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm only a couple episodes in,
Hmm.
um, but so far, what I really love about the show is it introduces the idea that like we can have sexual problems even as teenagers. There's
Oh
this
my God.
idea in culture that is so prevalent that like you have the best sex of your life
Hmm.
when you are at your just like hormoniest, which is as a
Yes.
teenager, which is as a young person, like this permeates everything that like we believe the older we get, the worse sex we have, when actually the exact opposite is proven true. And so
Hmm.
I like that this show shows that it's like it's normal and okay to have erectile dysfunction, to have delayed ejaculation,
Hmm.
with the orgasming, that like teenagers want information and just like abilities and a place to talk about sex somewhere in a
Yeah.
safe, open
Oh my God.
environment. And that teenagers don't just want to like talk about sex because they're horny. It's because like
Yeah.
they need a place to learn and
Hmm.
to learn about their own bodies and feel like their body is whole and that there's nothing wrong with them. And so I do really love that part of the show of just even introducing that idea.
Like, that was brilliant. That was absolutely brilliant because it is so like one of the things that we always do with our clients is do a sexual history because we really want to know. I really want to know what happened to you in those formative teenage years. And
Hmm.
there's a good amount, I won't say all, but there's a good amount of our clients that have problems that directly go back to something that happened in their teenage years, that first, second, third sexual experience, and them being teenagers and not being able to just go talk to an adult or go talk to somebody else to work it out has now impacted them for years. Just impacted them for years. Whether it was painful that first time, so I'm always thinking it's going to be painful, or I got laughed at because I didn't know what I was doing, or because let's see, what's another one? Just I've never been good at it, or right, like my body wasn't accepted. And so all of those things just like it's so much and it impacts it. And then I think like as a practice, we don't really see a lot of teens. And so I know, they actually have not been my favorite population to work with, just because sex and teens and parents can be really complicated. And so I've always shied away from that professionally. But you're right, teens do need a place to talk about sex. So let me bring Jessica up to speed. Okay, Jessica, we're actually talking about the show Sex Education on Netflix. And
Oh,
how have you seen it by chance?
I've not only seen it, I used it in a presentation for one of my sociology classes.
Okay, well, great. So Mary Hannah just kind of gave what she loved about the show, and she loved
Yeah.
about the show in one sentence is how it put a light on teenagers' need and desire to talk about sex, to
Yes.
like real conversations. So what
Yeah.
did you love about the show?
Well, I mean, like, Jean, like I can't remember her name, Scully, whatever, Gillian Anderson. There we go.
Okay.
Phenomenal sex therapist, and it's very
Hmm.
interesting seeing the dynamic between her being a sex therapist and having a son, and
Hmm.
how I think that's a really good showcase of even if you're a therapist, that doesn't mean you're a perfect parent. You're still going to make
Right.
mistakes.
Hmm.
You're still not going to have the right conversations. Like there's still going to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
struggles.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important to realize.
Oh,
And
that's
then I
so
really loved
huge.
um, the talk about asexuality. I think it's in season 2 or season
Mm.
3, where one of the girls goes to talk to Otis, and she's like, "You're really bad at this. Like, this is terrible." And then Jean comes to the school and she talks with Jean and she's like, "Oh my God, you're amazing." And she's like, "You changed my life." And she basically related asexuality to like you're at a restaurant but you're not hungry.
Hmm.
And so like that's perfectly fine. And the way she talks about it, and I would almost want to like pull that quote specifically of like, sex doesn't complete you, so you can't be broken.
Ooh. Oh my
Mhm.
God, that is a good line.
Right? So good. And
Yeah.
that is so, I think, important for all sexualities of like, just because things aren't going exactly the way you want doesn't mean that you are deficient or broken as a person.
Wow. Oh, that's
Mm.
so good. That's so good. Yeah, I want to put that on a billboard. I want to put
Right.
that on a billboard. I want to make all of our clients read that. Like if I could just like go watch this even before you start with us. This like might solve some things. So okay. All right. So that was what y'all love about the show. All right, Mary Hannah, what did you hate about the show and dislike about the show?
Yes. Okay. Even to like before that, I just also want to say like agreed of how amazing of a quote that is because we get so many clients where sex they feel like says something about them, and if they fail
Mm-hmm.
at it or if they succeed at it,
Mm-hmm.
that says something about who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then because of that, sex becomes like this really precarious thing that's really
Yeah.
weighted, and
Yeah.
each time it's like someone initiates, then you or your partner, you're thinking of that weight and you're
Yeah.
feeling that weight even subconsciously. and
Mm-hmm.
and so that's a huge thing we see in our clients of like, if you're really feeling that
Mm-hmm.
tenseness with
Mm-hmm.
like initiating or being initiated to, that might be
Mm-hmm.
part of it, is like how much are you putting on yourself of like in your relationship, are you
Mm-hmm.
like grading your relationship on how you do on this next interaction, because that's going to make it a
Mm-hmm.
lot.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I've been working with people this week on the idea that I'm a failure. Okay, no,
Mhm.
can we just back off of that a little bit? Like it's like you like especially because there's not a lot of sex education, like purely like being like engaged in a sexual encounter sex education,
Mhm.
that a lot of people made mistakes just because they didn't know or they saw something they thought it worked like this, like they didn't really have a good understanding. And so, really working with my clients to say, you are not a failure. Can you look back on that younger version of yourself and say, hey, young lady, hey, young man, you didn't
Mhm.
have all of the information you needed to have that
Mhm.
particular event go as successful as you would like. But it doesn't mean you, the person, are broken or bad or failure or whatever you're calling yourself. And
Mhm.
so I would love for people to stop, like, stop wearing that identity of like, I'm terrible. I'm a failure. I'm broken. Just
Mhm.
like I love for you guys to see it as a skill. Like I was early in building the skill. Like I didn't know. Like nobody's mad at a baby when they fall down walking because we know that they're building the skill of learning how to walk. And
Or a
so
muscle. If you're not using
yeah,
it very often, it's going to
right.
atrophy.
It's gonna atrophy. And so I would love for teenagers, I would love for adults who used to be teenagers to look at those years as I was building muscles, I was building skills. Of course, things were going to happen. Of course, it wasn't going to be perfect the first time. I didn't know. I didn't know my own body. Like,
Mhm.
how in the world was I expecting porn level, TV rated R level sex to happen when I didn't know. And it's one thing to have like a great body that, like, most people would say, the teenage body is a great body in so
Mhm.
many ways, but also so many ways it isn't. Like, one of the reasons teenagers fall down all the time or trip all the time is they're still learning their bodies because they went to bed and woke up with a body that's slightly different. And so they're getting things wrong. And so just could y'all just relax off of that expectation that teenage sex is supposed to be great and amazing
Mhm.
because it's not always, we're still building a skill. We're early in building a skill. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mary Hannah. Because that's like,
Also, too, like,
please.
I really want to throw the question of like, what was disliked about the show. Since I've
Yep.
only seen a couple episodes, I really want to throw that to you, Jessica, because you've seen the whole series. So
I
it's
have.
like, I want to know what that's like actually reflecting back on the whole series.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do feel in like the first maybe 2 to 3, it gets better at the end. It
Mhm.
feels like some of the sex is a bit like they have full frontal nudity, they have full
Mm,
nudity, there's people engaging in sex, like it feels somewhat graphic. And it feels a little performatively graphic to a certain extent,
mhm.
which I don't mind it, but like when I wanted to use it as a tool to work with my teen on teen stuff, teen sexuality, like it was a, ooh, could we just talk about this and not like have like full frontal or like,
Mhm.
and I mean, like, I understand, and I do not want to ever come off as a prude because I loved the series in its entirety, even the sex musical, which was a sex adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. I don't know if you got to that
Okay.
part, but there were tentacles involved. It's a whole thing. Um, but like, I have actually used sex education when we look at, and completely separate of sex, of oh god, what's her name, the main woman, Otis's friend,
Dave?
Ave, yes. So when she has a relationship with her mom, and her
Mhm.
mom uses drugs, and
Mm.
spoiler alert, if you haven't seen all of this, please stop watching. Maeve's mom dies. And so,
Mm.
she dies when she hasn't been in the series for a while. And then Maeve has to come in and deal with it. And her brother is unpredictable and she has mixed emotions. So, whenever anybody has complex grief, I'm like,
Mhm.
go to watch Sex Education, watch the episodes of Maeve dealing with her mom's death because like she's still mourning, she still misses it. And it's also
Yeah.
grieving what you wanted to have. So I think that the
Yeah.
sex education as a tool is so important in a myriad of ways, not just specifically looking at sex.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So that's great to hear that it improves with the later seasons, because that was also my first impression. Is I'm always like a little hesitant when you have like these shows that really
Mhm.
show off a teenager like minor having sex, because it's like on the one hand, like teens are sexual, we should be talking about it, absolutely. And
Mhm.
also, when is it becoming the object of desire through the point of view of the camera and becoming like voyeurism?
Mm. Mhm.
And the people involved are minors.
Mhm.
What you
And they're
said,
not minors, they're adults, just as a heads
sorry,
up.
yes.
Yeah.
But even just like that teenage, like that really young
Yeah.
Lynn.
It's what they're trying to portray. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. And so that's great to hear, though, that not only do they like kind of notice that and draw back on it, but then that you're able to use the show for other examples of just
Mhm.
complex grief and emotional things happening in someone's
Mhm.
life.
Yeah, that's really, really good. That's really, really good. Okay, what's next? What else is coming up for you guys around the show?
I feel like to a certain extent, they do a really good job of looking at, so in the later episodes, the school is basically shut down. So the school shut down, they have to go to another school. And at the other school, they have a different way of having school, and Otis is put into a position where there's already another like sex therapist that's there, and she has a following. And so I think it's really interesting to see how much a school environment can um what it can do for your students, for your teens, like being in a different
Mm,
environment could create a completely different kid in that if they're
yeah.
accepted or if they're persecuted, if they're expected to be amazing and produce all of these awesome things, they often
Hmm.
will. And if they're not, they will shut down and shut out. And so I think
Yeah.
understanding that environment does have a major difference. And if we're looking at the ability of taking your child from a different school, if they're not succeeding in a particular school, not like you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Okay, maybe your environment is not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And so I need to put you in a different environment, which I think is huge. And a lot of kids don't realize they could be in a different environment because they just don't know.
Well, I think a lot of adults don't realize they could be in a different
Oh my God,
environment.
huge. Yes.
I was looking at this random thing on social media, and it was saying something to the fact of my therapist told me to get a new job, like, like, as if that's a like horrible advice that can't be done. And I was thinking, but sometimes you do. Like sometimes you our clients are stuck and perpetuating a cycle. They were like, but you do have agency. Like you could get out of the cycle. Like what, but have you tried? Have you thought about it? Because sometimes it is the environment and understanding that and then bringing that back to couples therapy and thinking about our couples and like, is your environment supporting the sex life that you want?
Mm-hmm.
And being open to what do we need to do to change it? Like, really, if you are working full time, you have 5 kids under 5, you're trying to get your PhD program, and y'all are trying to start a business, it's that is a horrible environment to have this wonderful full sex life. It's
Mm-hmm.
just not. And so, being open to not just the nuances of life, but sometimes the very practical things of do we need to be trying to do this right now? Is this environment going to support? Um, one of the reasons that we're actually going to watch and talk about how to build a sex room is that's another practical environment. Like, does your
Well, they actually talk about
environment?
that in season
Yeah.
or in episode 3. So I've gotten to episode
Hmm.
3. I haven't watched the rest of it,
Okay.
but there's a couple who have 3 children, so much laundry, like,
Hmm.
and there's a breakdown in responsibility in that he feels very neglected, and she feels like, how
Hmm.
am I expected to do anything in this environment because it's so
Yeah.
terrible? And I loved that they addressed that. It's not just super affluent couples who have
Hmm.
all of this time and no kids and then
Hmm.
want to do something for themselves. I love that they included a couple that, like, yeah,
Hmm.
no, we have major marital issues. He works third shift. I don't.
Hmm.
So he's going to
Hmm.
work when I'm coming home or when I'm going to bed. We've got
Hmm.
3 kids. They know no boundaries or environments, which is
Hmm.
another parenting issue. But like looking at that, and so I'm very interested to see how that's resolved.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Because I like when TV shows show the real life, and I think that's what I'm liking about. I kind of feel like it's the golden age of television, but it feels like when I grew up, um, I just felt like it was a lot of soap operas like Dallas and um, All My Children. I know that's day and night, but everything felt like it was very polished and perfect. And now I feel like TV shows are doing a better job showing like the reality of life. Like everybody isn't rich and live on a ranch. Like everybody doesn't have maid service. Like everybody doesn't wear 6-inch heels to breakfast. Like, and so
Well,
I really
and
do love that when TV shows are showing like, nope, this is a real deal. This is a real thing. Yeah.
yeah, and going back to sex education, additionally, that and Schitt's Creek both made me think of it. They show relationships that, like, they really do love each other and
Hmm.
want the best for each other, but they're not supposed to be in a romantic relationship right now, either through
Mm.
circumstances or through we're better friends. We are not supposed to be in a romantic relationship. They had a lesbian
Hmm.
couple on sex education where they were the best friends and one person came out. And so it was like, oh, well,
Hmm.
we need to be in a relationship now. And they were having terrible intimacy.
Hmm.
And she's like, I don't want to be with you romantically. We are friends, but I don't want to be with you romantically.
Yeah. How
Mm-hmm.
would you work with that couple if they were in your office?
One, I would want to talk to each of them individually to kind of like, where are you?
Hmm.
What are you feeling? Because the person who doesn't want to break the other person's heart, but is not
Yeah.
feeling it, needs to have a come to Jesus moment of, this is not doing you any favors. This is not doing them any favors. Because not
Mm-hmm.
only do we have this sunk cost fallacy of like, I'm in it, I have to stay here, we also have opportunity cost in that the
Mm-hmm.
longer that you're staying in this, they're not meeting the right person for them either.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely so. All right, Mary Hannah, how would you work with that couple if they were in your office?
Yes, definitely. Like individual work is great. And also, yeah, just helping them process of like what's keeping them in this relationship and
Mm-hmm.
then helping them really to see of like those things that Jessica talked about, like that
Mm-hmm.
idea of like, oh, it's really like this sense of fear. And sometimes it takes like as a therapist, like pointing
Yeah.
out, so you're going to be in this relationship and worry about this for the rest of eternity. And and
Mm-hmm.
it's like them kind of realizing, oh, I guess that's technically the track I'm on through this indecision
Yeah.
is like,
Yeah.
what's my plan here is to just
Mm-hmm.
do this forever indefinitely. And then it's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
no, we actually, this needs to change. Something has to happen. And so really like kind of empowering like the couple of like what their choices are and what they could look like moving forward and that they are able to make them and survive it.
I think that's the biggest thing is surviving it. And so helping our clients build up resiliency, um, ego strength, uh, um, sometimes it's just flat out decision making, and then also helping them figure out. I think a lot of times verbalizing those fears out loud. I'm scared I'll lose my friend. I'm scared I'll lose this person. I'm scared I'll never find anybody else. Um, I'm scared the dating process might break me this time around. And so there's so many types of fears that keep us in a relationship, oftentimes past the time that we need to be in them, just because. And I get it. And I think another thing that we do for our clients is just kind of sit there with them and understand, yeah, getting out and finding a new partner isn't the easiest thing. It takes work and time and energy and effort. I think the older you get, the more purposeful you have to be about it, about finding a partner. So, okay. All right. Last comments from the show, Sex Education. If anybody who hasn't seen it, why would you tell them to watch it? Please watch Just So Because.
Yes, I would say like watch it like just to start the conversation, just to start that
Mm,
reflection of like what sticks out to you, which
mm-hmm,
character really sticks out to you and why. Have you ever had a talk about sex with anyone
mm-hmm,
before? Like
mm-hmm,
what does that look like between the characters? Like even just like that foot in the door of like even
mm-hmm.
comfortable talking about sex yet, maybe we could watch others talk about sex and kind of see what that leads to. And like, don't be afraid to get creative when it comes to sort of getting your foot in, opening that doorway of like deeper
Yeah.
reflection of who you are.
Excellent point. Thank you. All right. And Jessica.
I would encourage anybody who is watching this show to really try and remember what it was like when you were a teenager. So do
Mm-hmm,
not view this show as an adult, because I think there's a lot of like prudishness, or teenagers aren't supposed to be like, there's a lot of judgment that comes in, versus if I remember the questions that I had when I was a teenager, or
mm-hmm,
I remember the things that I dealt with when I was a teenager, and
mm-hmm.
being able to see them struggle with those same issues, struggle with who to talk to, and realize that we really need to be the adults in the situation that teens can talk to, because teens will get it
Yeah.
from other teens if we're not
Yeah.
talking to them. They're going to get it somewhere.
Yes, 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 yes. And I have this. I got it from a colleague of mine, and it was talking about the amount in which teens watch porn, and that parents grossly underestimate it. But at the end, the redeeming thing is, but if teens can come ask their parents about it, they will.
Mhm.
And so that's an excellent, excellent point. Like, be open to the conversation. and as much as you may be cringing inside, like just don't show it on the outside. Just kind of go with it and see where they are and what's happening. So, okay. Thank you, ladies. This has been a wonderful conversation. So next week, I'd love to talk about how to build a sex room, and it's on Netflix as well. So I'm excited about that. All right, I'll see you next week. All right,
Great.
bye.
Bye.